Software-defined vehicles and cars becoming computers on wheels is a net new phenomena which has opened doors to innovation that is specific to software innovation in the industry.
Hello and welcome everyone to a brand new episode of the Auto Tech Show. My name is Mark Babin and I'm very excited to have you with me all for today. It's going to be a great episode. Now, it'll be no breaking news to many of you that the repair and auto industry is under pressure, managing the complexities of repairs that have exponentially evolved in today's vehicles alongside outdated workflows. In this episode, we talk with Rev's Adi Bathla about why the real tech revolution in automotive isn't in the vehicle, it's in the back office and on the shop floor. We'll explore how Rev's AI ADAS software is helping independent and multi-location repair shops operate like modern businesses and thrive by eliminating guesswork, improving communication, and identifying billable calibrations. Now, with that introduction, Adi, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for your time today. Great to have you on. And yeah, really looking forward to your insights on this one. So again, thanks for being with us.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me. And I was really excited when you brought this topic up because there's really been a tectonic shift in the way the vehicles are or have to be repaired in this age. And a lot of this has been amplified by the government regulations.
Yeah.
So in North America, the United States mandating automatic emergency braking to come equipped in every single vehicle on the road by 2029, that leading to manufacturers equipping all sorts of permutations of these features and components in vehicles. AAA did a study actually back in 2018 where more than 98% of the net new vehicles being manufactured had systems like automatic emergency braking, lane keep assist, adaptive cruise control. And what that has led to is that the repairer, especially the technicians, that were super used to working with the bumper, the fender, the quarter panel, are now expected to do work that is akin to a skilled engineer with lasers and targets and mats, working on sensors, cameras, modules, electronics. It's a fundamental shift in the way we repair vehicles, and all the more reason why I got super excited about the topic.
Yeah, and I also love the shift in how people expect vehicles to be. They're more software tools rather than just a means to an end, rather than just an A to a B. It's much more part of our lives. And I do want to get into that side of it, but something you just brought up, and I didn't intend to start here, but you brought it up and I'd like to just dive into it quickly. You mentioned the regulatory side of things. I'd love your perception on this because I like to ask this question to different parts of the industry. We obviously have innovation on one side of the pie and we have regulation on the other side. How do you feel those two pieces interact? Does one feed the other and we need that? Do we need regulation for innovation, or is it innovation that challenges regulation? What is your kind of initial thought on that relationship?
I think regulation demands innovation, in my opinion. Because if you look at the exact regulation that I mentioned, which was automatic emergency braking in every single vehicle on the road by 2029, why that came about is because accidents are the third largest cause of deaths in the United States at the very least. And in a way, it's great that the government is paying attention to this chaos. And there's a huge ripple effect that regulation has now. I briefly mentioned the manufacturers piece. So manufacturers, of course, started scrambling to equip the vehicles with this technology. And turns out that the consumers love it. Your cars are smarter. Cars are now software-defined vehicles. This wasn't the case in the past ever. Right. And The second major ripple effect that I can mention is the repair shop. The repair becomes an afterthought. Even if the manufacturer defined and trained centers have been equipped to some extent to solve for this problem, the independent repairers, your body shops, your calibration shops, glass shops, even independent dealers, they have been left behind.
Right.
So to answer your question, regulations are there, and I'm sure there's a very solid reason why they take place, but they demand innovation. They're a birthplace of a lot of technology companies and companies in general to actually solve for the ripple effect that actually comes out of it.
Yeah, I like that. I like that sort of the way you worded that as well. And I think you're right. I think it's very much two elements that feed off each other to evolve as we go. Otherwise, we'd still be, a decade behind. But it is nice to see everything sort of work in tandem and companies be forced to innovate and be forced to advance the technology in their space. So I really like how you worded that. Now, digging into a bit of this topic today, obviously with what we're talking about, I see that with Rev, obviously you've worked really closely with shop owners across the country, which I love that you sort of had that hands-on experience. And given that firsthand touch point, what are some of the most common operational challenges that you're seeing on the operational level, on the front line, especially when we look at managing these newer, more complex vehicles and obviously the tech that goes with it? You sort of touched on maybe a few of these in the opening, but what are those common challenges you're seeing?
The most common challenges, I'll start with the first one, which is research.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example of what a repairer would do when a car comes into the shop. Let's say it's a 2021 Mazda CX-5.
Sure.
The car comes in. As a repairer, I take the bumper out only to find out that there are components like radars behind the bumper.
Yeah.
And then I look at the number of repairs that I'm performing, and repairs can go up to 100 plus line items, different types of operations on different components. If I took out the bumper versus I repaired the bumper or replaced the bumper or replaced the quarter panel, there's a completely different permutations of procedures that I need to perform on the components like the radars, cameras, modules, electronics equipped in the car.
Right.
And it doesn't even stop there. I have to now sift through hundreds of pages of manufacturer-specific documentation, look at subtext for requirements, then go find out where the procedure instructions are, and then go inspect the car, maybe only to find out that the component never existed. So it's a monumental research task that can take up to weeks. The car is sitting in the bay, the shop is bleeding revenue, the claim is held for the insurer, and the consumer is dissatisfied.
Right.
So massive ripple effect on what software-defined vehicles are doing to the repair side of things. And this research is only getting more and more exacerbated. The last metric on this has been that 85% of this research is actually not performed, and repairers move on to the next vehicle because bleeding and long cycle times is bleeding revenue.
Right.
And to no fault of theirs, because obviously it's not getting any easier. So that research and 85% of these procedures not being performed is a road safety hazard on a macro level.
It's a scary number. Yeah.
So that is the first pain point. And the second one that comes to my mind is documentation. Because every repair can yield a specific permutation of procedures that need to be performed on these advanced components, and there can be millions of these permutations. In order for the repairer to actually get the claim processed, they have to properly document every single step of the way.
Sure.
The before state of the car, the after state of the car, where exactly is the manufacturer talking about what needs to be done, what is required versus what is recommended, the pre-scan, the post-scan, and all these artifacts need to be combined to put together a picture perfect claim in order to make sure that the work that they're doing is actually going to get paid for. Now, I have seen on the shop floor repairers spending 4 to 6 hours in a day just documenting, and they don't get paid for it.
Not even touching the car. Yeah.
Not even touching the car.
Unreal.
The third piece that comes to my mind is the equipment side of things.
Right.
Now, Audi Night Vision, and I went to a customer in New York City, upstate New York actually, and I saw them have a huge wall of equipment that is sitting and catching dust. And I asked them, why is that equipment just, out on the side and looks like you haven't touched it? And they told me that we are the few of the fortunate ones who are able to invest in net new equipment. And the equipment you see sitting on the side, it's not even that old. It's just 12 months old.
Unreal.
So with new vehicles coming out, there's a lot of Audis I saw coming in, and Audi Night Vision requires a very specific piece of equipment to fix. And that is just one example of how many permutations the equipment can take. And not only is a repairer supposed to keep up with the ever-changing landscape of technology being embedded in the cars, learn about how to fix it, but they have to spend money to find the equipment in order to repair it as well, which is time plus cost that they're bleeding on top.
Mm-hmm.
The last one I'll talk about is the claims piece of things, which is what I've seen shops navigate is after they have procured the right equipment, after they have spent hours and hours in a day documenting things the right way, and after doing all the research that they're supposed to do, there's a whole process of getting their claims reimbursed, which is the back and forth with the insurer, and to no fault of either side of the equation. It's just the way the things are set up today, where they have to wait 6 to 8 weeks to actually get reimbursed for the work that they are doing. So the infrastructure and communication rails between the repairer and the insurer today are not up to the mark when it comes to all these permutations of net new things that the repairer has to do and the insurer has to navigate. So they don't really exist for today's world.
Really interesting how really all those elements sort of feed into that last piece. I really like how you sort of chronologically went down that timeline, because the better the research, the better the documentation. Obviously, that makes everything easier for every path that follows it. Are we in like uncharted territory here? Obviously, we're dealing with things at a scale that we've not seen before, just with how fast technology is evolving and what we're seeing come off the shop floor from a manufacturer's point of view. But is this something that we've had to face before? I mean, cars have evolved over the last decades, just maybe not as quickly, and technicians have had to adapt to new tools to do that job, or new processes and new methods. Is it just uncharted territory, the speed at which we have to do this rather than the process itself?
You bring up a very fascinating point, because history repeats itself.
Right. Always.
Always. And if you look back, the same cycle happened when airbags came out.
was going to say, yeah, exactly.
When airbags came out, the exact same journey was taken, and the same thing happened when the pre-scan and post-scan became mandatory back in 2000s when cars actually started having electronics in them.
Yeah.
So if you look at those two examples, the normalization took about a decade.
Which is unsustainable today.
Unsustainable today, exactly. So today, back then, airbags are just airbags. Yes, there's permutations of airbags per make, model, year, but they're just airbags as one type of component. When you look at the pre-scan and the post-scan, that is, again, something that you have to do, but those are two types of procedures. And today, there's millions of different permutations that can happen when it comes to the procedures you're performing, when it comes to the components you're touching, and the equipment that you have to procure to actually fix those components. And the pace at which all those permutations have hit the road, have hit the repairer, have hit the insurer at the same time.
I think that's exactly it. The amount that we're seeing happen simultaneously before it was sort of scalable in the sense of it was one at a time and we could sort of live and adapt and every process could follow a procedure. There's so much happening now at once. It's kind of catching us all off guard. That sort of leads to the follow-up here. Obviously, we're seeing so much technology in cars happen so quickly. Why is innovation sort of skipping the shop floor, the service center? Why are we seeing such a big gap in where that technology is evolving?
You know, it goes back to one of the fundamental principles of when I started Rev personally.
Mhm.
I grew up with some values which are dear to me, things like don't chase money, bring value to society, and the rest follows, and bring technology to industries that still run on pen and paper. That's where it's the most needed.
Mhm.
And I look back at what my thoughts were in this age of AI. When people think about innovation, the brain of the entrepreneur always goes towards that is where the current is flowing. That is the hottest thing. And I want to innovate in the direction of AI. And you end up building something like software for software. But the real world needs are actually in areas like the shop floor. And when you think about automotive industry and auto in general, it is the fourth largest category in terms of consumer spend, at least in the United States. And but it has historically been hardware dominated.
Of course.
Software-defined vehicles and cars becoming computers on wheels is a net new phenomena which has opened doors to innovation that is specific to software innovation in the industry. As much chaos as it has brought and amplified by those government regulations, you go downstream, there's chaos, and there's chaos with software-defined vehicles, which has opened doors to innovation in software in the auto industry.
Right.
There are net new pain points, and legacy players haven't been built. Legacy players in automotive technology haven't been built in a way that they've innovated with market tailwinds and actually kept up to pace with the industry, because there's only so much you could have solved in the past that was related to auto and the shop floor. And with this tectonic shift that's happening and the magnitude of the tectonic shift that we're seeing today, that has opened the doors for software innovation on the shop floor.
And it's nice to see where that innovation is coming in. But the reality, and I kind of bring this back to you here, is that we're not going to see a slowdown in the innovation side of the vehicles. It's only going to rapidly increase. So I guess from the conversations you've had, from the work that you've done in building what you have, how do we keep up? How do we, as software providers, as solution providers to shops, to repair shops and service centers. How do we keep up? Is there an answer, or is it just sort of stick at it and eventually we'll make head ground? What is your perception there?
We actually dug deeper into this after launching our core platform that solves for the repairer and its exact problem, which is how do we repair software-defined vehicles. And now Rev sits at your fingertips within seconds, does that research for you, helps you document end-to-end, and helps you process the claims. Some of the pain points that I mentioned. And how do we keep up is something that we have asked ourselves as well. There's two components to it. One is keeping up with the ever-changing requirements.
Right.
So from our data, we see that back in 2021, there were average of 2 procedures related to these software-defined components that were required per repair. And now that has become more than 4.
Wow, doubled.
So permutations of these components and how fast vehicles are getting software defined is exponentially increasing. Right. New requirements come out, new vehicles come out, quite literally every single day. Yeah. So from a technology standpoint, we thought about how do we solve that problem. That's number one. And it's really a data problem.
Yes.
How we started was, it was me on the shop floor getting buy-in from ASC level 5 certified technicians who can read these requirements, interpret these requirements very easily. There are not that many in the country, and really lived in that shop for a very long time to quite literally download their brains and bake it into the architecture of the product.
I love that. Yep, absolutely.
And what that evolved into was that was absolutely not sustainable.
Yeah.
What that evolved into was we found out that the technicians, when they get the diagnostic output from the products, they have to make sure that every single variable in that diagnostic output is pristine, because it has to go to the insurer at the end in order to process the claim properly. That led us to build feedback loops within the products.
Right.
And now there are more than 100,000 repairs being processed to the platform every single month. And then we get millions of data points, which we utilize to actually make the products more and more intelligent by the day, to keep up with the ever-changing industry. We've actually built pipelines into the product and stood up a team of trained technicians. These technicians, they stress test the products and against new requirements coming out, against new vehicles coming out, in order to keep the product most up to date.
I love that. It's like a true example of like a true data-driven organization with an eye on the future and processing and reading real world values and putting that into what's going on, using tech, using the data that is real. Like it's just gold in and gold out. I love that. It's a super example. Moving more then to that idea of clarity that you're helping to provide, can you describe what a digitally mature repair shop looks like today with what's available today? A digitally mature environment, again, looking at those workflows, looking at that communication, that transparency of information. What does it actually look like?
This is very well connected to the second piece that I was going to mention, which was regarding meeting the repairer and meeting each user type in the shop where they are in their workflow, basically. So yes, we solved the diagnostic problem, but the second biggest problem, I'd say, when it comes to innovation happening but stalling or stopping, and multiple players entering in the industry, solving part of the problem, has led to disconnected solutions for the repairer that don't really talk to each other.
Totally true. Yep.
So what we sought out to build as our Act 2, and we are in the process right now, is evolving Rev into a connective tissue for data, commerce, operations for the total repair, with the goal that the repairer focuses on the car and the customer, and that's it. What the repairer wants is the running of the shop, every single element that I mentioned, to be taken care of, and them being able to focus on the car and the customer. The repairer is barely making ends meet. They're running on razor thin margins. And the last thing they want to do is spend time doing back office work, and the time is money for them, and that's the time that they don't get paid for, basically. So the vision for technology should be how to keep the repairer focused on putting the safest car back on the road and servicing the customer to the best of their abilities, and taking the rest of the work out of their hands.
And that's really, I guess, what that perfect shop looks like right now. Is mundane processes can be handled by the tech, by the solutions provided. They can spend their time doing what needs to be done and get essentially more out the door, spend less time in that back room, essentially is what you're saying. Being able to move through process with tech as part of that connective tissue. I really like how you worded that as well, because it should be part of what goes on, and that is the evolution, right? Eventually we're going to be fitted with all this type of gear where the tech is going to do a lot of the thinking for us. And I guess that's the next step, right?
Absolutely. The way we build our ecosystem of products is exactly as you mentioned, which is the technician, the estimator or service writer, the bookkeeper, the owner. They have their own roles in the technology that we build.
Yeah.
And in the case of, for example, the technician, the car comes into the shop, and all the insights to repair the car properly is in their hands.
Right.
The estimator has every single piece of information that they need for the inspection of the car and to process the claims properly. The owner has a bird's eye view of where is the car in that workflow. The consumer and the customer has that bird's eye view as well. And the bookkeeper, the rest of the back office, they have information at their fingertips to process end-to-end operations of the shop. And the cars are going in and out, because the time that the car is sitting in the bay and not being worked on is bleeding revenue. And that's the opposite of what the goals of the repairer are.
Something that comes to mind here, and this is something that I've had sort of come up in other conversations as well, this collaboration between software providers, hardware providers, OEMs, manufacturers. How important are you, I guess, first of all, are you seeing that collaboration happen so that there can be that true transparency of information so that it is simpler for those on the ground? And then I guess in the second part, how important is that collaboration in advancing, in being able to keep up with what's happening?
The collaboration is extremely important. That's the short answer. The OEMs, the repairers, the insurers, absolutely necessary to evolve the ecosystem and actually be able to solve everybody's pain points, really, because everybody has to react to it a certain way, has to react to cars becoming computers on wheels,
right,
essentially. And the fact of the matter is the organizations can have different goals, but they can also have goals that are aligned. And as a third party coming in, really solving the whole piece of the pie rather than just one.
Right.
We definitely see it as our job to connect those dots,
I
basically.
love that.
We see those parallels in terms of goals when it comes to the three sides of the marketplace, really four side. The fourth side becomes the consumer. And what we are trying to do is build that infrastructure of communication and build the infrastructure where the goals are aligned and the ethos is transparency, basically.
Mhm.
So how do we bridge that gap between OEMs that are doing a fantastic job at how the pace at which the vehicles are evolving, which is great. It's actually a positive. And how do we connect that with the repairer? We definitely take it as our job.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the repairer and the insurer, how to bridge that communication gap where they have to talk to each other in order to arrive at the answer together, and how do we bridge that gap of transparency so that the information flows in a low to no touch way for the repairer all the way to the insurer in order to create that create or fill that gap.
It's such an important step, having that transparency. It really comes down to this concept of operational intelligence, and that's something that clearly you've got a firm grasp on. I think it's something that we see coming up more and more in the industry as well. For shops on the ground, what are sort of those early steps they can take then to move towards operational intelligence in their day-to-day operations, based on, again, the conversations you've had and the challenges that you've expressed? Those are first early steps that they can take to hit that goal.
Three things that come to my mind when it comes to the shops that I see more closer to best in class in how they think, and we also think from the perspective of really learning from the best in class and bringing it to the rest of the industry. So,
Yep.
the 3 points that come to my mind are: one, being able to make data-driven decisions. Number two, your choice of tools should not just do a part of the job, but really looking towards what the end-to-end workflow looks like. And those tools should remove the human in the loop rather than having a human in the loop for different types of tools that you're using. To unpack the first one, an example I can give you back to the shop that I was mentioning regarding Audis coming in. You have to procure a certain type of equipment to do work on the night vision of these Audis. The way they thought about that was very data driven, in the sense that, hey, there are X number of Audis that are coming into my shop month over month. The tool is going to cost me Y. And if I do spend money on this equipment, then my payback period looks to be Z, essentially.
Yeah, basic math.
Basic math, and really just looking at as much data as you can gather and basing your decisions on that data.
Mm-hmm.
And then comes to technology. Repairers, if and when they look towards technology for as a solution, I definitely would recommend looking at software products that really solve the end-to-end problem, from your technician all the way to your service writer to all the back office folks at the shop as well. If they are not working for a referral, a reference that you do, then you should absolutely not go for it. And it's really important to have groups and folks that you might not be competing with in different parts of the country to really understand what is working for them and use that blueprint for your shop. Those are the things that come to mind.
So really kind of being inspired by what others, and I think having those conversations, and I see this a lot at trade shows actually, and it's almost one of those hidden like true purposes of these shows is those chances to connect in person with what your sort of competitors, but non-competitors, as you mentioned there, but in other parts of the country, other parts of the world. How are they getting over these challenges? Because like you said, these are common challenges. These aren't things that are unique to any specific region. Maybe there's nuances, geographics, but I think everyone sort of faces these holistic challenges, and being able to just talk. I love that point. Just being able to talk to them and see how they're dealing with it. Maybe they're struggling with something similar, and you can have that session. So I really like that as well. That's one of the main reasons I love having the sort of going to these shows and having chances to talk with a lot of people like this. I think that's really great. You mentioned on the technology side there, and it's a point I wanted to get to because we have a lot of quote unquote smart solutions out there, but there's a big gap between being smart and being useful and being something that's actually used in the day-to-day, truly integrated into the process, truly integrated into that operational core of that business, especially in the service centers. From your perspective, building what you have, having that touch point to the technicians, what is the difference between a smart solution and a useful one?
That's a great question. The primary ethos here is, for us, when we build products, is meeting the repairer where they are in their workflow. Mm-hmm. And I'll unpack this a little bit from the repairer's lens. As a repairer, there are certain tasks that you absolutely have to perform.
Right.
Now, a couple of examples I can give you is, as soon as a car comes into the shop, you have to scan the car using a scan tool, and you have to write an estimate to be able to communicate to the insurer. So you have your estimatic system. And the way you should look at the tools outside those two requirements that have been the case since decades now, is that how can this tool fill the gap in a way that it doesn't require me to do anything outside my core workflow? So the way we built Rev was we integrated deep with the scan tools, with the estimatics. As soon as a car comes in, the car is scanned, Rev runs in the background, and within seconds, it generates insights and puts it in the hands of every single type of the user, be it the estimator, service writer, owner, or back office, and all the way to the estimatics, reaches the insurer with a pristine claim. So you don't have to do anything outside your core workflow, because doing anything outside your core workflow are the hours that you're not going to get paid for, right, essentially. So instead of thinking of solutions as piecemealed answers to the many problems that you're dealing with in the shop, the better way would be, how does it save me time when it comes to my staff's time or my own time? That is a great lens to look from. And the other piece I would mention is, in your choice of tools, definitely look towards, this is something that you mentioned as well briefly, Mark, definitely look towards guidance and areas where net new tools are coming out, because the industry is evolving at a rapid pace. Right. What you might have needed yesterday might not be the case today, and having that line of sight is very important. I would absolutely advise the repairers to shop for multiple and look at all the available tools out there, but make the decision based on which tool is going to serve me in the long haul. In the background, what that might look like is the company that is producing the tool innovating? How fast do they move? Are they going to continue solving my problem and more problems? Or is this a one-time purchase that might not work for me tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah. See a lot of those sort of like one and done solutions rather than those. I mean, there are a lot of these like long-term partners. I think that's exactly the point that you're making. I think that's fantastic to find a service provider or solutions provider that really embraces at their core innovation attributes, has invested interest in the part of the industry you're in, as you clearly do with that touch point on the ground. So I think that's another fantastic point to make. I guess the last question, the last corner I want to put you in here is just sort of, and again, you're touching on a little bit of this here and there, but the lessons you've learned along the way to get to where you are. What have you really learned about what shop owners want, need, versus, I guess, in parallel, the assumptions that a lot of people get wrong?
I think the assumptions, I'll start with the assumptions piece. The assumptions that a lot of people get wrong is solving the problems. Like I talked about research, I talked about documentation, equipment, claims. Solving these problems and looking at solutions first and then the problem is a big mistake that I see companies and innovators make. You should always be starting with the problem. It should never be solution in search of a problem. And for us, it all starts with the value. It's very easy to get starry-eyed by net new technology, but what I've learned along the way is always start from the empathy, and empathy equates to the hardest problems that the repairer is feeling in this changing landscape, and not really start solving for the first problem that comes your way. Try to spend as much time holistically looking at all the problems that go about in a shop and prioritizing those problems as well, and thinking of a solution that can capture as many of those problems, or at the very least, if you're starting with a problem, then having a line of sight on how it solves the end-to-end problem for the repairer rather than giving them a piecemeal solution. Another thing I've learned is the market, the industry is moving at light speed.
Yeah.
Now, that has been really mind-blowing to see. That really amplifies our empathy that we have at the company as well. And the way we respond to it is we really take it to heart. We take it as a challenge that we are so in love with solving for the repairer that when the industry changes phase, an example I can give you is the procedures that are related to diagnostics are getting more and more normalized because the car has to be repaired to factory default, and how those procedures are priced is changing at light speed. We saw this news, and within hours we got in a room, put together a solution, and in a few days a solution was out.
So cool.
That was just a tiny little example of how we feel the empathy of the repairer, because the rules, regulations, the tailwinds around software-defined vehicles is only amplifying and it's moving at light speed. We are trying our best to really put the solutions that we can in front of them to solve for those problems at the fastest pace that we can. But even if you remove us from the equation, it's really difficult to navigate those changes, especially with the business setup of a repairer. So yeah, those are some of the things that we've learned along the way. Another thing I shared with you was meet them where they are in the workflow. The best way to solve the repairer's pain point is to help them solve it by not asking them to do anything outside of what they're used to. That thought process actually works in their favor because that leads to adoption across all types of users in the shop as fast as possible, which actually helps them navigate the problem in the best way possible as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think it's really good. And I think just in obviously looking at what you guys are doing, the focus on empathy, I think that's huge. And it's something that clearly comes through in a lot of the solutions you provide, the content you put out. So I really like that tie. Something else, and I'll kind of just add to a little bit of what you said, is working with a customer. And I see this and I'm sure you have this in your examples, and we see this in some of the companies that really lead their way. But as technology evolves, we see the service shops, we see the end user actually come back to experts like yourself and ask, what do we do in this case? Like, as this evolves, how do we do it? And you're already on top of it. As you said, you've kind of already starting to solve the problem a couple days into changes happening. And them knowing that they have the confidence to come to you for something like that, knowing that you're already on top of it, that's such a core fundamental part of obviously what you guys do, and having innovation as part of your core, having empathy as part of your core, and really having a passion for that. So I certainly applaud you guys on what you're doing. And I know that's a situation that probably comes up and that you deal with. So I've thoroughly enjoyed sort of deep diving on what you guys have done, and just speaking with you today really enhances a lot of that. I think you have those fundamental values that you mentioned you like to follow. Clearly that's ingrained into the culture of the work you do. So I applaud you on that respect. And again, just some fantastic insights today. I know the audience will love. So Adi, thank you so much for the time. Thank you for the chat. I've thoroughly enjoyed this one. Definitely can tell by the length of the episode how long this could continue, but I know you've got lots to do, so I won't take any more of your time. Before we wrap up the episode, any final notes, anything you wanted to mention before we close?
I think this was a very enjoyable episode as well, Mark. Thank you so much for having me. It sparked a lot of thoughts and re-sparked a lot of values that I'm taking to the office with a fresh brain today. Great. And I hope this reaches the stakeholders that we talked about today, the repairer and others as well, and it's fruitful for everybody. And I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm inspired myself. Even though it's the end of my day, I go into the evening with a lot of hope. So thank you for that. And again, wish you and your team a fantastic rest of the year and the summer. Hope you have a great summer of innovation as you do. But again, just first and foremost, again, thank you so much for the time today and the insights. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much, Mark.
And to everyone watching and listening to this episode of the Auto Tech Show, thank you for being with us. Hopefully you've stuck around. It's been a fantastic episode. I can't wait to sort of dive into this one and revisit it. So much to take away. Hopefully you've enjoyed and had those takeaways as well. If you have any questions for myself, for Adi, for what Rev is doing, head down to the notes and the resources down below. There'll be links for getting in contact with us, for seeing what Rev's doing. I certainly encourage you to go do so. Fantastic work being done there for this episode with Rev again. And I hope you enjoyed it. So with that, we'll bring this episode of the Auto Tech Show to a close. Thank you very much for being part of it. We'll see you on the next one very soon. And until then, wishing you a great day wherever in the world you may be. Bye for now. This episode of the Auto Tech Show is sponsored by Rev, the AI-powered ADAS calibration platform that streamlines the entire process from insurance to reimbursement. Learn more at revhq.com. Again, that's revhq.com.